Hi, I'm Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
Now there's excitement right there for you. So guys, welcome.
Set the mood. Set the mood.
Yeah, welcome to West Point, Mississippi, home of Mossy Oak brand camo. And
how did I know you were going to say that?
Lots of things that we love, and we've got two people on the couch today. I'll go ahead and make some introduction. I think this may be one of the. We hadn't had many ladies in here. For whatever reason.
Shame on us.
Shame on us, yeah. But we have Sarah Parvin, who is the young lady that's trying to grow the world record bluegill.
World record sized.
Mm-hmm. And
what's
then,
the difference?
And then I'm not sure, but
we can ask that later.
We can get into that in a moment.
We will do that.
And then next to her, we've got a fisheries scientist / biologist, Shawn McNaulty from American Sportfish Hatchery in Montgomery, Alabama. And
glad to be here.
He is. He's going to help us with some. We're going to ask some serious questions, Shawn.
I'm ready.
Y'all are visor. Y'all both have visors on. Yeah.
Y'all are the advisors.
Big folks get really hot, and you got to let the heat.
Yeah, no, I'm with
you. Got to
you.
let the heat out for sure.
Yeah.
So
cool the brain off.
I thought visors are for the coaches that get mad and slam them on the ground. So I hope y'all don't get mad during the podcast and throw a temper tantrum.
We'll see.
Well, hopefully not.
Yeah, Lanny, I'm glad to see you.
Well, I'm good to see you too, Bob.
We've all been busy. I hadn't seen you much this week.
It's only Tuesday.
It's only Tuesday, but
we saw each other yesterday.
A lot of
I did
parts.
see you brought the tractor back finally, the LS tractor.
I did.
We appreciate that. Other people would like to use it.
They are
They're great machines.
They're great machines because if Bobby can't tear them up,
I mean,
nobody tear
them up. That's right.
Look, I had a scare on it yesterday. I was this Saturday. Sent Toxie a picture. I was going along and I looked and I was watching, and I ran up on a phone, and it was a very, very young one, and I got a picture and got out of there, and then I got video confirming that the mama came and got her.
That's good. Got to be careful. What is it? August 15th usually? I mean, before nesting fawning season, you don't really want to bush hog too early.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, I was just kind of cleaning up around the edge. It wasn't a thick area.
They can't take. We've been teaching the public how it's best.
He got excited. He got on that tractor. You know how it is. He got on that LS, and he just couldn't stand it.
This ain't no golf course, Bobby.
Yeah.
All the best biologists tell us to let it go, let it grow.
Yeah.
Don't worry about manicuring your place to make it look so good. Focus on the habitats, cover for fawns, don't take it away, and what do you do?
Yeah, there I was.
You take it away.
I really wasn't mowing it. I was cleaning out a little area that I was.
Okay, so you weren't clipping?
I'd mowed down I had cut some trees, dead trees, some privet. I was trying to burn, and I was just trying to clean up right there so I could not step on a snake. Is what I was trying to do.
And you found a snake.
I did find a snake.
Found a snake.
Yeah, I found a snake.
A big one.
It was a big one.
It was a giant.
I had an exciting weekend.
Yeah, you did.
The good news is that he had sent me that, and he was like, it's so awe-inspiring. I don't know what the word is. It's overwhelming. I know in nature's like whatever, lightning strikes or, tornadoes or brilliant sunsets or so it's overwhelming to your senses, but there's something about the fawn. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Or baby turkeys. I mean, the things we love,
when
you see them right at creation, it's awe-inspiring.
It really was.
And the fawn is just like it's amazing. I see why it's so wrong, but I see why people, because I've run across them, I see why people want to pick them up and take them home and try to raise them. You cannot do it. But they're so just, I don't know what the word is. They're so amazing.
It took my breath.
The sweetest thing in the world.
Yes.
I think on that, we've had a couple of small pulp sightings. We might have had a late hatch, too, for some turkeys.
Yep.
Maybe it's just on people's mind now, but the internet seems like it's full of people posting a hen with 4 or 5 poults.
I just think the awareness is so much higher, and people are so grateful to have a hatch at all. Sometimes the way it's been going. So we definitely, I don't have numbers, anecdotal, but it looks like we've had a better hatch 2 years in a row.
It feels good, that's for sure.
Yeah. And just speaking of that, we're working on this website with Dr. Michael Chamberlain, Mike Chamberlain, our turkey hunting guy.
Wild Turkey Doc.
Yeah. So it's called the Wild Turkey Lab.
Yep.
And it's .com, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of information on there that guys can, and I think you can go to it now and look at it if you want to. But it's got research that's ongoing research that's going on for turkeys.
And you'll be able to follow Mike through the season, through the years, what he's doing, research and everything else. So check him out.
What a busy guy, though.
Oh, he is. But his goal with this was to everybody. I won't say average guy. We're all average guys and gals, but non-biologists, non-scientific trained minds or whatever that love the birds to be able to really access and understand all the research, because that's thrown around a lot, but I think a small percentage of our, following our viewers, our people really understand it. So I think it's exciting the years to come, what can be, understood by everybody there. Great concept.
Yeah, I'm so proud that we're associated with that. So for sure. All right, so I'm looking across. We got a bunch of everybody's bushy-tailed, bright-eyed.
Bushy-eyed.
Everybody's ready to go.
I've never seen bright-tailed and bushy-eyed people before, Bobby.
So Sarah, give us just a minute here. We got to pay the bills.
Always got to pay the bills.
Lanny, guess who this show is brought to us by?
Today, I'm going to guess is brought to you by...
You're wrong.
Biologic.
Yeah, well plantbiologic.com.
It's always brought to you by plantbiologic.com.
But, and I think these guys, I hadn't even asked, but I think, so this show is brought to you by two different companies, the Moultrie Fish Feeders and the Texas Hunter Fish Feeders. They're both really good fish feeders. I think you probably use one of those.
We do. We use the Texas Hunter.
Yeah.
Is that the square one?
It is the square one, yeah. Yep. So
it's a good one, a really good one.
So not to confuse people, but there's two companies out there that make fish feeders, and y'all should check them out. If you go to the Moultrie one right now, that MoultrieFeeders.com, and put in Mossy Oak, you get a 15% discount.
Cha-ching, man.
There you go.
I'll tell you one thing. The few feeders I have used, I like the way the fish feeders throw the feed out in a straight line.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I've used them for deer hunting. And you can put them on the edge of a field, and it flings it all out into a straight line.
Well, you can predict if you got cameras, you can get a lot better pictures too.
Remember that one we had at the lease?
Oh yeah,
and
that was a great one.
Directional.
I think that thing's still around here somewhere.
Yeah, but it was a fish feeder.
It worked real good. Sure
worked
did.
great. Moultrie.
All right, let's turn our attention to the couch. And, we checked in with you. We had a podcast with you a year or so ago, and we learned about you and your father. It was a great story. Trying to grow these world record sized bluegill. How is it going? Where are we now? And can you give us an update? Get us started.
Well, it is. First of all, it is an incredible amount of work to operate any pond at this level. But with the Coppernose, we have since last year, since we checked in with you last, we have turned a corner where we are starting to head into a little bit of uncharted territory because of the number of big bluegills that we have. So we are very close to the 3-pound mark in numbers for the Coppernose. And it's real important when I say, because I will just say bluegill, but please know that I'm referring to the Coppernose bluegill, which is a subspecies of bluegill. It is the fish that we started this project with, and to see these fish growing and to be able to go back and look at subsequent years of where we were, where we are today, we are leaps and bounds ahead of where we had planned to be. So, and American Sportfish, Shawn over here, basically, Dad and I make the mess and Shawn cleans it up. That is the working relationship that we have.
I think they feed more in their 5 acres than I do on my entire fish farm.
Yes.
Wow. Water quality's a mess, for sure.
It's a mess. It's a mess. And we're going to be really transparent about it because it's important for people to understand. We're going to a place that not many, if any, have ever been before. And so there are going to be learning curves with everything that we do. And so obviously providing pelleted feed to these fish is one way to push them to their true potential. And they do have fathead minnows. We've got gambusia that are in the pond. I mean, there are other food sources, but pelleted feed is the way that we're trying to accomplish this. We want to grow the biggest coppernose bluegill in the world. So we're going to push the limits on it. That's what we're going to do.
I wouldn't be surprised if you already are in a sense. I mean, do you have any competitors out there? I mean,
If I do, they're tight-lipped, and that's probably very smart of them, because I came in and was like planting my flag. This is my market share. Like, I'm creating this lane. I do have a lot of people that have helped and been a great resource for us, like Bob Lusk, Bruce Condello, BigBluegill.com, and they did something similar in Richmond Mills, North Carolina, 2 or 3 decades ago with the copper nose. And I believe the biggest one that came out of there was 3 pounds, 1 ounce. And that is, again, specific to the copper nose.
Was that the Kingfisher Lake?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I've always wanted to go and fish that.
Well, you can't now. It's no longer fishable. It's not a pay guide fishery anymore. Apparently, the daughter now owns it, and it's a wedding venue or something like that. So that entire project, I think, has pretty much been stopped.
So I don't know which is harder, weddings or fishing.
I know.
I could tell you fishing
That's
is
a
more
mess.
expensive.
Yeah.
I just find it so interesting that you guys are pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
Folks try to grow huge deer. Folks try to, I had a stint of trying to grow citrus here in Mississippi, just things like that. We're always fascinated with the extremes.
Yes.
Toxie and I are fascinated with hybrid oaks, which are uncommon. So it's always fun to be different.
Yes,
like
it is.
I was always the kid that if somebody else had on the same pair of shoes, I didn't want to wear. I didn't want to get those shoes. And
I'm still
it's
that
kind of
way.
the same way,
My
with
shoe
what you guys
collection.
are doing, and so many other people are doing in the outdoors, trying to push the envelope and do something unique.
So let me start. Can you tell us how big the lake is, the average depth, and then and Shawn, I'd like you to weigh in too. And where's is the water supply just drained from when it rains?
So it's a 5-acre lake. I think the average depth was 6 feet when we did the bathymetry on it. It was 6 feet.
What's the deepest part?
9.
Wow. So it isn't
And that's just one spot in front of the spillway.
right.
Yeah.
So it's not very deep.
It's not very deep at all.
Go ahead.
No.
Sorry.
I forgot what else you asked me already.
Well, so the size of the lake, and then how is it? Is it spring fed or is it just run off from rains?
We've got an underground well that we use there, and then there is a spring that runs down the back of this mountain that can feed into it as well.
So that probably helps with water quality somewhat.
Only in a flood, you can walk across their water in the summertime. And that's really when Sarah pulled us in on this, was to help with the blue greens. And, you just have to keep the water quality better so you can keep feeding, because fish will go off feed once the water quality gets bad. And blue greens, the first time I met Sarah at her place, I could smell the blue green about a half a mile down the road.
The algae.
Yes.
Wow.
So is that from the fertilization?
From all the feed.
Nutrient dense water. Yeah.
So they just so much feed they don't eat, and it's
Well, and what they do eat and the
then what
waste.
they poop out
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was told earlier, we've got this, Shawn, you know all about it, this Perfect Pond fertilizer, Perfect Pond Plus, that we love, and so many people just use it and to help grow bigger fish in their ponds and up the carrying capacity. But we learned that Sarah was advised, hey, you don't need that.
Absolutely not. I'm walking away if I hear she's putting fertilizer in it.
Which I won't. I won't do that. I know better.
So, and it's because you've got feeders going off 5 times a day or more?
It depends. We've not fed as heavy this season as we have in previous seasons, because we were really paying attention to that water quality. The second that water quality starts to degrade and go down, we put those fish at tremendous risk, not only from disease, parasites, but having a low oxygen event. And we've had 2 low oxygen events already, and we're just now into the middle of July
So do you have the paddle wheels
This
and everything?
year.
Okay, great.
this year.
This year.
So
this year.
is that another question is like the underground well sounds like it'd be, you can kind of flush the system.
We try, change that water out as like we can, but even then, we're not doing anything out there in moderation.
Right.
Okay, so we're pedal to the metal with everything
Pushing the
that we
limits.
do. So the large paddle wheels we have are actually rated. We have 2 of them, and each are rated for 10 acres apiece. So it's for 20 acres of current and emergency aeration. And we use those when we get into a low oxygen event to immediately try to get that dissolved oxygen back up. But we also use them to feed. And that is something a little bit different that not every pond owner does. We create that current, we get that feed in that water, and then we get that feed moving from bank to bank. I mean, it literally covers the entire surface area. So every fish has the chance to eat.
How long does it maintain this like floating integrity before it falls apart? Do you have a special feed that
We
sticks
use,
together longer?
Well,
or?
we use Aquamax MVP, and it's a mix of floating and sinking,
Right.
and the pellets are various sizes. So, but I mean, really, to be honest, floating feed can stay in the water for a while, which
really?
is
Wow.
why
Yeah.
it is so important as a pond owner. You never want to feed more than those fish can consume in a 10-minute window.
Right.
And Dad and I, we say we have it down to an exact science. It takes us 3 hours at dusk to feed our fish.
Wow.
Like manually out there, 3 hours to get the entire feeding complete.
This is every day?
Every day, 7 days a week. And we time this with the wind. I mean, we know if the wind is not blowing in this particular direction, big feeding is off. We let the feeders do the work. If there's, torrential rain, because our bluegills will not feed in torrential rain. They will feed in bright sun, daylight, but for some reason in torrential rain, those coppernose will not take feed. So we are like in tuned, all day long. We're preparing for that big feeding because that's the biggest feeding that we do out there. And if we miss one step, we could end up with a bunch of feed in the water. That's a problem.
Right.
So with
Wow.
the feed, you were talking about, the nutrient load and how you guys push the envelope and how you don't fertilize. Is the feed acting like a fertilizer itself? Like it's
Yes.
okay.
Absolutely. As it breaks down, it's full of nutrients.
Sure.
So between the feed and the fish pooping out, there's just, you're feeding 2 pallets a month in 5 acres. That's a lot.
It's a lot of feed.
Hey, we're trying to grow a world record fish.
Oh,
here.
you got to do it.
Can't be messing around.
We want to push it. We
Yeah,
want to
that's right,
see.
yeah.
We truly want to see, can the coppernose go to that limit? And it's been somewhat controversial, to be honest with you guys. And now, if this was a 15-pound bass, everybody would be at a girl and me left and right.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when you say, yeah, we're trying to grow this ginormous, unprecedented size of a coppernose, people get all willy-nilly about it. And it's like,
How? Why?
It's just
I don't
social.
know.
Now, I
Social
don't
media.
I don't understand that. Well, are they willy-nilly like on social media or actually in person?
social media.
Yeah,
The
that's
people
right.
I
That
meet
makes
in
everybody
person-
brave,
Yes, it does. The people I meet in person, which are a lot of, PhDs, sciencey brains that understand, hey, this is actually kind of cool because nobody's really done this before. They understand and they get it. Like, you kind of have to go into that area of, we're going to push the boundaries here and see what we can do. And obviously, it should go without saying, we are always going to put the safety and the health of these fish first. If we ever notice that, hey, these fish can't support this type of growth or this weight, we would have to pump the brakes and switch species or do something different.
Yeah, it's not like you're pumping steroids into the water.
Not
or
at all.
anything. You're just giving them a high quality diet,
protein.
which is what fish use to.
They're spoiling them.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say people that are taking shots at this have probably never eaten a copper-nosed bluegill. Because the first thing that pops in my mind is a 3-pound copper-nosed bluegill could be the best table fare fish in the world.
It's a bluegill
Saltwater.
steak.
Yeah, it is,
100%.
'cause they
Bluegill
are
steak.
I was going to bring that up, but I
the
was scared
best.
I'd get
I mean,
chastised.
I'm sorry, over flatheads, over crappie, over walleye. As far as if you can get a big enough steak out of it,
Yeah, they're delicious.
those pelleted fed copper-nosed bluegills are incredible.
So speaking of that, Shawn, what can you tell us about coppernose and how are they different than just a regular bluegill?
It's pretty similar to the bass world, in which the Florida bass, they get bigger than the natives, they spawn more than the natives, and they go to feed a lot easier.
They're more aggressive, catching them on like jigs and stuff. They're real aggressive too.
So are they just from a particular like river system, or is it?
They came out of the Panhandle originally, and they've picked up everywhere. Well, at least in the southeast, they do have a cold limit. They really don't do well north of Nashville.
Okay, yeah, I've fished them one time, and it was an incredible experience. They weren't as big as your fish, but definitely bigger than the bull brim get at my farm.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so I'm just curious. So the world record bluegill came out of Alabama, Katona Lake, if I'm pronouncing that right,
Just south of Birmingham.
in the 1950.
50.
And a guy, from what I read, the guy caught it on a cane pole.
He did.
That's a pretty incredible story. But the lake was real. I'm looking at you, Shawn, because I want to know. The lake was an old strip mine that filled in, a spring filled it in. The water was gin clear. What would have made that be so productive to be able to grow?
It's probably just low density of fish. And so he had choice of whatever he wanted. And then a fluke in genetics. You know, regardless of how well you feed or do anything, you've got to have some luck with genetics to break a record.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just hand pick one and say, I'm going to do this and it's going to happen. So,
Well, that reminds me of the bass from Georgia, the world record. It's almost hard to believe. Like, what was really going on here? You know, nobody's, with all these advancements, nobody's caught anything even close to that.
So that world record was just, is that called a northern bluegill? When it's just the
native or common.
And so the copper nose came out of Florida, and when I look at the record, I was curious what's the largest copper nose out of Florida, and they're 3 pounds is about what they seem to be topping out at. Why didn't you just go for that native bluegill and think that, boy, if it happened here, we could grow these a little larger? I'm just curious the thought process.
Well, for us with the fish farm, we're raising them. We don't do what Sarah does. We're raising for numbers. We're raising for easy for people to feed them in their ponds, to feed the bass and that kind of thing. So it's a different world from what we're doing and what she's doing. And Sarah can tell you that they had a fish kill a long time ago. And I think natural selection just got lucky, and it had some really tough fish that it's the only thing that survived. And they're just pushing through and getting big.
So your fish are larger than the largest fish in Florida already. That's
We're in year 5.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, we caught a 44-ounce one last time we were up there.
44-ounce copper nose.
But you're getting consistent big fish.
Yes.
You're not just getting the random big.
Yes. Yes.
I grew up calling them bull brim.
Bull brim.
I can't even also imagine how hard that would fight on a fly rod.
It's unreal.
Yeah, they're
Pound
my
for
favorite
pound.
fighting
Yeah,
fish.
pound for pound, they got to be tops. Kind of like, I guess, some of those saltwater fish that are shaped that size. They can turn
sideways.
Yeah, that's a lot of pulling against them.
So when we shock the lake, it's incredible. Normally when you're shocking a pond, you'll see a big bluegill here or there. But you hit the pedal on the shock boat, and there's just hundreds of 1.5 to 3 pound.
Big ones.
It's hard to focus
Yes.
to scoop the fish because you're just running around.
We always get so excited because I'm usually at the front of the boat with the dip net, and I'm like, Shawn and I are communicating with eye glances, and then we just hit, like, we have this stack of old tires. We hit this tire, and it's just like you see these white glowing like big discs just emerging from the depths, and you're like, God, are those bluegill? I mean, even we're sometimes like, holy cow, this is crazy.
Wow. So one of the things that we're doing is that we're shocking the lake several times a year, and we're culling 9 inches and under.
Huh.
That's crazy.
So these
So when are we having a fish fry?
the 44 ounce fish, how long is he?
It was 12,
I
right at
believe
12,
so.
12
Yeah.
inches.
Yeah, I've got a question. Do you have any predator fish at all in there, or is it just pure
We do.
breed? Okay, that's
We
a-
have tiger bass in there from American Sportfish, but we have crowded them,
right.
so they will stunt, and they're not reproducing.
No, there's very few places where there's a situation called bluegill crowded,
Right.
into which the bluegill prevent the bass from spawning because they're just annoying them and eating eggs. And I don't think you've had reproduction in a long time in there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So they help. So the tiger bass, I mean, they're,
Right.
3-4 pounds. They kind of help a little bit with population control, but they cannot eat those trophy
Oh no.
bluegill.
Right.
they can't even come close.
No,
So,
a giant bass couldn't
No.
eat one of those.
Wow. So you said the world you're approaching it. In your mind, are you thinking you're 18 months away from having and it sounds like you're just trying to grow a fish in that class,
Yes.
not necessarily that fish.
yes. So we had started out thinking, could we do this? Could we grow what would be a world record fish? And there was a lot of blowback from that. People, it's high fence deer hunt, like you shouldn't be able to claim a world record. And I saw both sides of that coin. And so I actually reached out to the International Game Fishing Association, had a long conversation with them, because the rules very clearly state private water fish count. That's all it says. Does not go into detail. There's no addendums or exhibit A's or any of that, right?
I feed this much, so I'm not allowed,
Yes. So, but after a lengthy phone call with them, which they were fantastic to deal with, by the way, they have said, well, timed feeders need to be excluded. If you are feeding a fish to grow, you can't claim the title. However, we would recognize the offspring of that fish should it be in another water that does not have a feeding schedule or timed feeders going off and things like that. So it was very interesting. And, it didn't really take any pep out of my step, because I still feel like Dad and I are going somewhere the pond management industry really hasn't gone before. Yeah. So it's still very special to us to do this and to do it together.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, and to do it together.
Do it together.
Yep. And so it's exciting to see all the interest now, and what, several months ago, people were still sort of on the fence, and now all of a sudden it's like we've crossed that hurdle. People are cheering us on, and they have questions, and they want to get engaged with what we're doing, and they have so much interest. So I am happy as we sit right now. If it never went any further, wow, look what we have accomplished and what we have done. We've got people thinking about these fish that were considered kids fish, trash fish, supper only, now going, well, at 3 pounds, a bluegill is without a doubt a sport fish.
Oh my gosh,
for sure.
There's no question.
At 3/4 of a pound and 1 pound, they're a sport fish.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've always loved the copper-nosed bluegill since the first time we stocked them. And they're to me, they're kind of like wood ducks. They're just beautiful.
They are.
They're so colorful and so beautiful. And on others, I honestly have just been as enamored with them as the bass that we stock with them.
He
I'll go as far to say I like pan fishing more than.
Yeah, I do too.
They're so colorful.
That's me.
Well, when I was a kid, I had my grandfather, my mom's dad, and my Uncle Jack Cottrell, who was Daddy's uncle. And both of them would take me fishing all the time. And it would always be brim fishing with a cane pole. Both of them. That is their passions. But so it was kind of ingrained in me as a kid to love them,
Yeah.
And one thing I was going to say, it really doesn't matter. And y'all have gone to such great lengths. It's amazing just to see that commitment to excellence. And like you said, doing it together, the trip, the journey. But no one can ever take away. I mean, it's regardless of it being recognized in the Sportfish record books, there's recorded history. And if you grow the largest one in recorded history, you grew the largest regardless. So, that's what you weren't trying to do it in a native pond. It was a oxbow lake or something. You were trying to do it under, with things you could control and affect.
Yes.
And my hat's off to you. If you get there, you get there.
Yeah.
So what,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I understand that's not a fair judge to somebody just fishing,
right,
in the river or whatever. So all good for everybody.
It's still the biggest fish.
Yes,
Still big fish.
absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
That's right.
Well, and so many other people use feeders on their farm ponds.
Oh, I do on ours.
Oh, yeah.
So, Shawn, I imagine you manage a lot of ponds. Y'all's company manages a lot of ponds, and you always want people, boy, if you would just do this, or if you want them to kind of step it up. And it looks like they're doing everything you would want and more, maybe even more than
maybe
you would
a little
want.
more,
Lot
but
more.
yes. But no, it's really great working with them, because a lot of pond owners want the biggest thing possible, but they don't want the effort, the money, any of it. We can barely get folks to cull out bass.
That's right.
And so they get bass crowded, and here we are, they're feeding 3 hours a day. We're shocking. We're doing all these things, and that's what it takes to break records.
I want to know a little bit more about some of the instrumentation you use to test and some of those processes. Do you check
You're going to be very disappointed in this talk. Most of it's
when the
eyeball
levels
and
get
nose.
too
It's
high.
eyeballs.
Okay.
It's eyeballs and nose. And yes, every single day I'm out there laying eyes on that water. If I start to see something, for instance, our very first bout of blue-green this year, I saw what was the size of a pinhead. And I said, that's blue green. And my dad argued with me and he said, no, it's not. And I said, Daddy, that is blue green. I got to call Shawn. Well, I waited a couple of days. And by that time, it was building in the corners. And I mean, there was no question. I was like, man, I knew it. I knew I was right. And so I always like to be smarter than my dad because he's a retired doctor, right? And he is brilliant. He's the most brilliant man I have ever met, I have ever spoken to. And so I had something on him. I was right. And it took 48 hours and the entire pond was lit up with it. So it's like, you learn to really be observant and to notice changes that are happening out in this environment that you're in. And this is the type of pond you cannot turn your back on. Yeah. So I was gone to Orlando for 5 days here recently, and it was 4 phone calls a day to my dad. What's it look like out there? What's it smell like? How many geese are on the pond right now? Where's the blue heron? It is constant check-in like that. We're obsessed. We're literally obsessed with it, and we love it.
So what can you do if you have this blue-green algae? When you call Shawn, what does he say?
Pretty much.
That's what he says.
Herbicides. The first year we got involved, it was already middle of the season. So all we tried to do was just thin it out so it didn't get too bad. And that was a battle. I think I was there every 2 weeks.
Yeah, for about 4 months.
Because if you put too much in and you kill the bloom, everything's going to die. So, but while we did that, we also used BioBlocks and spread those around the pond to eat the muck on the bottom to reduce the nutrient loading. And we actually thought we were going to need to dredge our lake, but we did a sonar mapping, and after putting so many BioBlocks out in this thing, there was very little muck on the bottom.
Wow.
What's a BioBlock?
It's like probiotics.
Yeah.
For fun.
They're freeze dried bacteria that you put in, and they dissolve and wake up and grow and eat. And
never heard of this.
Me neither. I gotta have one.
And I'm going to tell you that I believe those were the big difference maker for us because that pond is 28 years old.
Wow.
Never been drained. Tons of fish kills. With the last big fish kill we have being literally, we lost everything but the copper nose fry in 2018. You talk about muck on the bottom. There should have been 4, 5, 6 feet of that mess.
We did the sonar mapping, and one of our biologists was out there. I think we were shooting a show that day.
We were.
Anyway, she said, you need to come out here because either this thing is broken or I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see it on the sonar. We were push-pulling it to check, and there just wasn't anything there. We've used these BioBlocks before, but never in such a controlled environment. And it really made a huge difference.
Wow. Look at that.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it does.
Max over here waving his
Frothing
hand
at
at
the
me. He
mouth.
must have some kind of good question.
No, the biggest thing that blows my mind is just the 3 hours a day for 365 days feeding. That's 45 days, 24-hour days of feeding. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is a very time consuming. That in itself, shows that's not easy work. But really, my biggest question would be, what is the carrying capacity of this 5-acre pond, and how do you decide which fish to take out and which fish to leave in?
Well, with the fish culling it, you shock it and kind of see where they're building up. It's the same when you do a bass lake, where they're stacking up in a bass. It's usually 13 inches, and that's when people aren't harvesting, and the feed and everything else, they get stuck right here. And so you start there and move those out, so there's more feed, there's more room, there's more everything for the bigger fish. So we started with 9. We'll shock again this fall and do the same and see if 9 inches is still the right thing. But I agree with Sarah, the fish are getting bigger, and there's more bigger fish. The last time we shocked, we had very few 3 and 4 inch fish, and so it might be 10 inches this year or this fall. So
Mac, when he asked that question, it made me realize I didn't catch on that y'all are feeding in the winter as well.
We do. We don't feed quite as heavy in the winter. When that water temp hits 55 degrees or below, we will pull back. This past winter in Huntsville, Alabama, we had the coldest air in 30 years. The lake froze. That's the first time that I remember, especially in my adult life, seeing the pond frozen.
Did you do something to? Did you run the aerators to keep it from?
We actually turned off our bottom diffusers. We did run some current for a couple of days, but this was like there wasn't anything. Everything froze. There was nothing that we could do, and so we were for about 12 to 13 days. We were waiting. Are we going to have a fish kill? Are we going to see fish float? Is there any damage or harm that was, caused to these fish? Because those type air temperatures that doesn't happen
Right.
in Alabama often.
And I forgot you told me they don't do well in colder climate. Wow, because they were on the fringe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had about a 2.5 pound bluegill that was stuck in the ice, and I actually walked out and broke that fish free so that I could look at it and tell had it died from some other reason or was this what was happening. And I don't know for certain what happened, but we never saw a large fish kill or really any kill from that winter time freezing. But to go back to feeding in the winter, the year before last, we had a relatively mild winter. Our water temps never went below 55 degrees. So we fed 12 months out of the year. And then, even then it's a little bit of a less feeding. Once the water temps start to warm, the fish are getting ready for spawning. That's when we will just hammer. We will put the hammer down on them, and we will get as much protein into those fish as they can post spawn, and let those fish recover so they just continue to grow. And when we did the last selective harvest using the electroshock boat, which I think was in March, it was almost maybe not even 4 weeks of fishing after that harvest, I saw the direct correlation with removing those fish. That's how quickly that pond responded. And it was like, we're catching nothing now but giants. And I mean, it's every cast. So
I think we took 500 pounds of bluegill out there.
we did.
God.
10,
Wow.
And that was the third.
50 pounds an acre.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's much.
Well, something like that. Do the math.
100 pounds an acre.
100 pounds an acre.
So
But math ain't mathin'.
Yeah, I didn't do good in math.
A lot.
So jumping back to the cold weather, the copper-nose can handle it if it gradually gets cold. But if you have a cold snap,
That last year that's what we had people had an entire podcast about it, but it turned the horticultural world upside down, much less food plots. It was the fastest drop in recorded history of the temperature. And so plants didn't have time to get ready to temper themselves like they do. Even plants that can withstand bitter cold died because of how fast it dropped.
and feeding in the winter can be dangerous as well if you have a really high protein, high fat diet, because they're cold blooded. Their metabolism is slower. It'll actually rot in their gut sometimes. So you just kind of have to watch it.
Well, there's a lot of little intricacies here in what y'all are trying to do. So I asked earlier, do you have a date? Like, we think these fish are putting on this much weight. We think June 24 is going to be.
No, I don't have a specific date for anything. I do think that we are a lot closer right now than we thought we would be to some of these bigger fish. And I think with the next time that we electroshock, I will have a more definitive, hey, we're 12 months out, because there is a window, right? There's a short window of opportunity to take a copper-nosed bluegill as a fry and create a trophy.
Right.
The first 90 days of that fish's life that is vitally important to taking that fish from fry to trophy.
So, I was thinking about that. But it's like deer people want to pour the nutrition to their deer and expect results like that year. And so much of it is the foundation they built as even the mom and how healthy she was when she had them and stuff. So what do they consume to make them? I know having a big, fat, healthy mom is good.
Yes.
But then what do they consume in the first 90 days because they can't eat the pellets?
They eat phytoplankton.
I got you.
So that whole ecosystem gets started with all the microscopic goodness.
Right.
And that's what they take in. And that is one of the reasons why we have so much structure and fish habitat down. We need that stuff growing on everything. Mm-hmm. We need these fish to be able to eat the second they can eat.
Wow.
So, it's super cool. It just is. It's a fun time.
Also, the more she talks and the more he talks, the more complex it is.
I know.
When we first started, it was like, how could something like this take 4 phone calls a day or this time and attention? And now you realize because not only is there so much work and so many variables, but you can't predict.
You cannot.
So you don't know. You have to check it constantly.
And I'll tell this too. My dad had a stroke in his brainstem last May, which changed everything. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that communicating is for me and him. What's going on? Right. What are you seeing? How are you feeling? So there's a lot of that communicating too that we pretend is because of the fish. It's not. We're checking in on each other that much. So.
Yeah, but that's so cool.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a much greater gift than the
Yes, it
fish.
is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That's awesome.
Yes, it is.
I got a little of that going on myself. Right
Yeah,
now.
I was thinking the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's to do with like farm. Did we get a rain on my beans or whatever? It's that kind of stuff. But small talk that's totally unnecessary. But
And if I keep him
necessary.
busy out there, that's a great thing.
What
So
a gift. Yes, that's such a cool story behind the story.
Yeah, they really. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You kind of made me forget what I was going to ask,
sorry.
but so Shawn, I'm gonna look at you. So this lake, are y'all doing something to stratify the water, keep the water from? I want to make sure I'm asking this right. You don't want the lake to stratify. Are y'all doing things to? Is there some kind of a pump in there that's moving current up and down?
There is, and this is where I'm going to get in trouble because I differ from a lot of people on this. Her Lake is special. The bottom diffusers are necessary because organic matter on the bottom doesn't break down without oxygen. You've got to have an aerobic environment. That's why the BioBlocks work so well. But, stratifying in a lake, when you go fishing, the fish are usually on that thermocline where it's cooler and they're more comfortable and they're not stressed. So a lot of times I feel when you destratify a lake, you're giving yourself insurance to not have a turnover, but your fish don't have that comfortable spot to go and relax. And so I think that hurts a lot of people's fish. But in Sarah's case, there is a bottom diffuser. I think there's probably 6 out there, and it keeps it completely destratified. And
Wow.
again, every lake is different, but hers definitely needs it.
So all of y'all are worried like this time of year that an afternoon thunderstorm with cold rain, is that a concern?
no, because Dad and I both, those multiple phone calls a day, right? If we see that thunderstorm coming, one of us is out there and has the paddle wheels on preemptively. Like, we're ready. Right. We are ready. We're gonna just go ahead and get ahead of it. We're not taking any chances. And so the year that we lost all the fish, a storm had come through and actually knocked out power to those paddle wheels. And we could not have that emergency aeration. And it took 24 hours and that pond had flipped. We were done.
So you got a generator now.
Well, we are ready. So, I will get out there with a lawnmower, a leaf blower, like whatever I have to do to get that water moving and aerated to save those fish.
So right now, the bigger problem is not a turnover from cold water.
Yeah.
It's going to be if it's cloudy for a week and the algae actually dies. And then you don't have anything producing oxygen.
Right.
One rain is not going to hurt her pond. So
But we pretend like it is. It's like our fire drill. We're always like ready to go. But we did have a couple of days where it was cloudy, it was overcast, and we had fish at the surface. And so that's the other thing. My dad is down there at 5 o'clock in the morning because that's usually the lowest time, is that right before the sun comes up. That's when the dissolved oxygen is the lowest. And we're walking the banks, like we're looking. If we see fish piping at the surface, we know we're in trouble. And sometimes it's too late. If you already see them at the surface, the damage is done. Those fish are hurt. They're going to be stressed down the road, which is going to, predispose them to disease. So it's not something you want to have happen ever. So keeping the oxygen up and the water quality is probably our biggest challenges.
I'm going to tell on your dad. This, speaking of the diffuser systems, I was in Kentucky somewhere and Sarah calls me and says, well, my dad turned on the diffuser systems and just let them run. So if you turn those on without a timer where it's a little bit at a time, you actually create a turnover.
You turn your lake over.
So luckily it was early enough in the year. It wasn't too hot, but they had fish on the surface. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So you got to be careful with everything.
Everything.
When y'all are pushing, to the edge, so those factors are more like, I've never even seen a lake turn over that I know of.
Oh, I have.
Yeah.
I've had them
It's
turn over.
bad.
Yep, I've had several times.
It's devastating.
Yep.
I got a quick question. So on density, population density, I know y'all are removing, a lot of the smaller fish. And just thinking back, I mean, it seems like it would make more sense to have fewer fish in that pond. Is there just a magic balance there?
It's just hard. Managing ponds is harder, I think, than any other type of management because you can't see anything.
Right.
Yes.
You can't put a game camera out there. You can't just feed this one big deer. You can't do those things. So I think we talked about the bass aren't reproducing. I don't think the bluegill are reproducing a lot.
Huh.
They're reproducing some, but just not at the same level.
Mm-hmm.
So all we can do is, harvest.
Yeah.
I made a note for later, but I'll make the point now that it reinforces something really important to all wildlife managers. And there's a term that's really relevant to no matter what you're doing, and that's carrying capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so to the degree you exceeded your carrying capacity, you got a huge problem.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it's the same way with deer. The only thing is, they can spread out somewhat. But again, if you can keep your place under the carrying capacity, everything will work in your favor. But that's a moving target because just like with deer, you have more. That's the one that comes to mind most that you'll pay the price for if you're not careful as deer, but especially in a pond.
Yeah.
And how you keep it at the carrying capacity.
They can't leave.
She's increased her
They can't go somewhere else.
Yeah, her carrying capacity is probably 10 times anything normal. But you still have to manage that. So, you take pressure off when you take them out.
For sure.
Can I ask what you do with them?
Yeah, we're
Do
having
you
weekly
restock
bluegill
them
fries.
somewhere,
Where's
or-
the fish at?
We've used a lot for brooders on our farm.
Okay.
We've also sold some of the bigger ones to people who want to pay
Good.
the Slab Lab price. So
Hey.
it works out.
Trophy.
Yeah,
Trophy bluegills.
for sure.
I mean, we're talking in intensive management.
Oh yeah.
You know, I was
next level stuff.
I was trying to compare this to our nursery where,
No.
we still have to go on Saturdays and water, and this is intense.
Yes.
So
Well, you've got a team helping you there, Dudley. She's like on her own pretty
Yeah,
much.
she made a great
Except for
point.
you.
No, I was
know,
going to say,
Yeah.
this is my MVP right here. Like, literally,
yeah.
we would not be where we are today without Shawn and American Sportfish. And every single person that works for him, they all know me. They all probably roll their eyes when I call, but still, that it is all a huge team effort from them and what they do. And we are all kind of like, we're looking for resources. Like, what do we do next? How do we just keep this going? Because it is so incredibly intensive. So,
Yeah.
they're smart. They got a great reputation.
You
Smart
mentioned
guys.
you mentioned assessing things every day.
Every day.
And what I found at the nursery is when you're there every day, a lot of times you don't notice the subtle changes quite as much. But I may go to the nursery every 2 or 3 days, and you can see
can see it.
changes. It's neat how that works. But we work together as a team, and y'all do as well.
yeah.
The one thing that's very common though, Dudley, is that when the ox is in the ditch,
Everybody.
all hands on deck.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, we need to get to the nursery.
Mac, let me ask this because I'm gonna forget it. Okay, but so Sarah, when I was like 12 or 13 years old, if I'd lived in your neighborhood, when it got dark and you were inside
You'd
watching,
have had problems.
I'd have been trying to catch some fish out of your pond.
Yeah, my game cameras would have caught every angle of your face. So,
So, do you have those kind of problems?
we don't. We've had those problems in the past, but I think, and this is where, this is what I want to naively think, is that people are so respectful of the actual story here of me and my dad and what we're doing. They're not trying to be hooligans and come over there and just have, shenanigans and do things. But the property is in somewhat of a location where you wouldn't ride up on it and be like, I'm hopping that farm pond. You probably be like, I'm probably going to pass on this one. I'm probably not going to get out there. There's, electric gates. It's a big deal.
The moat of rattlesnakes helps a lot too.
Oh my goodness.
Hop in that farm pond, so you know the lingo.
Yeah, no, she knows what
So
she's
you must
doing.
have a pass.
Yeah.
So speaking of hopping the pond farm, Mac, have you got another question?
I do. I would assume structure probably plays a big factor in the stress level of these fish. And what are some oddball structures that would be homemade, or then what are some more advanced as well that y'all like to use?
So when the pond was built 28 years ago, and I've got like Polaroid. You probably don't even know what a Polaroid is, do you? Do you?
yeah.
It's the new cool thing.
It is.
now.
no, it's
Oh my
it's
gosh,
coming back.
you're right.
It's coming back.
It has come back.
Yeah.
That's right.
But we have Polaroids of when the pond was being dug out. And back then, 28 years ago, there wasn't man-made, water-safe, non-toxic structure. You put in 18-wheeler tires,
Oh, yeah.
old Christmas trees, like you just threw whatever in there. And sometimes even with like the specific type of tree you put in, you have to be careful because they produce tannins and things that can, not be good for the water. But we've got the big, Department of Transportation concrete culverts that they use for road building. But we've got channels cut, we've got berms built up, gravel tops. Over the years, a lot of that has softened, the edges have, just because of the way that the water has been. And we just recently added in some man-made habitat, that's in spawning beds, things like that have made such a big difference. I mean, you can see sometimes when our water will get pretty clear across the top, you can see some of the tops of the structure and everything that's growing on it, and that's what we want. It also helps those fish to have a place to go to stay away from the birds, which are a big problem. The blue herons are a huge problem. The geese are a problem. Everything out there is a problem. So we've got some ospreys that have come in now. We have the bald eagle.
Oh, yeah.
That we actually love the bald eagle. We love Baldy. We built a statue for him out on the property. It's about 20 feet tall. It's a bronze eagle. And Baldy is very comfortable with my dad. He will come and eat right in front of my dad. So,
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, you're sharing a little bit.
We're sharing the space. Listen, some
Just
of
don't
those
eat the big
bluegill-
one.
Yeah,
Well, they
he's helping
can't.
you
The small
call.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
hoping they can't. We're like, there's no way that fish is picking up that 3-pound fit. It
Shoot, an
happens.
eagle. Yeah.
That eagle's got
Oh,
it.
he got it.
Yeah.
That
That's
eagle's
right.
got it.
Can you just
does.
weigh and measure that before
Hold
you eat
on.
it, please?
Do a catch release,
Yeah.
please. We're trying to get the slot line.
No cormorants.
Oh, yep. Got two
Uh-oh.
of them. I got the phone call this morning on the way here.
No.
It's a nightmare.
Sure did. We
It's a
haven't
night-
seen them in a couple of years,
nightmare
too.
for us. Well, they
Yep.
couldn't. They can't. They probably could spare. I've seen 4-pound bass with spear marks on them and stuff. I mean, they've tried.
Yeah, for sure.
They're the most evil thing to me in all of
Yep.
aqua sports.
No
They're
doubt.
evil. They're pure evil.
Well, let's talk about fishing.
Okay.
What's it like to go out there and so the way you're describing these, I'm thinking you could take a bass lure like a Rapala DT6 and I don't know that's how I pronounce it.
Rapala.
Rapala. So-
Come on.
Did
So,
he-
I
was
think
just
it is.
gonna let it
I think it
go.
is
I thought you
Rapala.
were from
I think it is
Alabama.
Rapala.
It is not Rapala.
It's
Is it
Rapala.
Rapala.
You're turning on your southern culture.
No, I went fishing with a guy that knows the family that owns it. I think they pronounce it Rapala.
You are from Alabama.
Well, I am from Alabama,
I
but
think-
let me finish my question, please. So, like a normal crankbait that you would fish for bass, I think you would catch some of these brim on, right?
Absolutely. I've done it
Nice.
100 times over.
I bet you a big beetle spin is poison on them.
We used to, so I grew up catching the bluegills with my dad and my granddad on a little bitty Keystone minnow.
Yeah.
It's an old school. I
Yeah.
mean,
the
it is
Renoski
teeny.
jig thing too.
That's it. And unfortunately, we can't fish those in the Slab Lab because they're so small they gut hook. So even like when fly fishing, I have to have custom made flies so that we don't gut hook on these fish. We upside hook, push the barb in, things like that. So, but we actually don't even allow treble hooks in the Slab Lab. So,
Good.
Yeah.
So if a guy showed up, let's just say you've got a little, Shawn, you're smiling over there, but like
Yeah,
a
a
little
guy
I
ultra
just
showed
feel
up.
light.
like you're asking for a trip is what you're working on.
No,
Trying to
I'm
figure out-
really
always
not.
his
Bobby
angle.
is
But-
always
always his
working
angle.
the
Trust me.
system.
Like if you had a little, light, ultralight typical rod with 4-pound line, are you in trouble trying to catch your fish?
So
on
he's
those?
tipping
You
his
gonna
hand
scr-
right now.
That's
you,
right.
you will scream with that. That's the setup I use. So I've got every kind of rod, reel, gadget, everything you can think of. What I have gone to is my dad had a custom made rod back in the 80s. It's 5-foot micro light. That rod, it recoils when it just goes all the way back when those big bluegill hit it. That rod is the most fun you can have legally. With a 4-pound test, a little 1,000 size reel, just a little bitty jig head hook on there, and then we've got these little 2-inch soft plastic minnows that we use, and all day long. It's just left and right all day long. It's absurd.
Yeah,
That sounds like fun.
and I never thought about them swallowing that bait like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
so while we've got you, Shawn, let me ask if you're fishing there or on the river and you gut hook a bass, what do you do as a fish biologist? What do you tell a guy to do?
Depending on how far it is, if it's already bleeding out of its gills, a lot of times cut the line. Hopefully they'll digest the hook. But most of the time, if you can get your finger in the bend of the hook and push it in, it'll come back out. As long as you're not bleeding through the gills, most of them survive. And again, temperature's dependent, everything else. So
colder would be easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would think.
Wow. Well, this has been really interesting.
Absolutely.
Fascinating. I love that she and he and they brought the spotlight to a way underrated, unbelievable sport fish and
cool fish.
Wild game species that we celebrate all of that as gamekeepers, but this one doesn't get ever, it's kind of lost in the shadow, just like a lot of stuff's lost in the shadow of, the 200-inch whitetail chase. This gets lost in the shadow of trophy bass and whatnot. And it's almost like, we stock them because they're the perfect partner to a healthy bass population. But until themselves are such a great game fish and species. So I think however much this reaches out there will stimulate people to take better care of what they have, including me.
Y'all have shell crackers in
We do.
They don't feed they don't feed on
They are notorious for not pellet feeding,
Right,
and they're bottom feeders.
Yep. Catch them on worms. We used to,
So they've got like pharyngeal teeth in the back. That's what they use to crunch those. They stay on the bottom. We might have some surprises.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw the other day you had caught what y'all thought was a hybrid. Is that right? So it's a shell cracker bluegill hybrid.
I sent it to several people and was like, I need confirmation because my eyeballs are
surely
telling me.
You've got this in an aquarium somewhere guarded.
I said, my eyeballs are telling me that I'm looking at an F1 hybrid from the copper nose and the red ear. And I was right.
That's incredible.
So, and that we had seen one or two here or there, right? And then so day before yesterday, I was out there and I was fishing. I wasn't doing the work I was supposed to be doing. I was actually fishing. And I caught several back to back. And I said, okay, this is new. To catch that many hybrids back to back, a couple of different size classes, but none of them were smaller than the 2-pound mark. This is interesting. So that has now piqued my interest, and I've got a whole bunch of research.
Let's dig a new pond.
Dudley.
Let's see.
You got a couple of hybrid geeks over here. And I mean,
let's see.
Where would you do to take it from there? Because you'd be the one to.
Well, it actually
where
happens.
do you go next? Would you cross one of those with one of the other in captivity, maybe? Or what would you do to try to take it to the next step?
Well, if you're looking for size, you probably get female copper nose and the male shell cracker, put them in a pond together and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if those hybrids could reproduce.
I think
Did you start a new species almost?
They'll reproduce, because like the Georgia giant, which I absolutely hate.
Right.
It's two different things, and they're not sterile. They reproduce after that.
Right.
Most fish, if they can reproduce on their own, if they can spawn, they're not sterile after that. We get the same question about the tiger bass all the time.
Mm-hmm. They're in the same genus.
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
Lepomus.
But I can't think of two more, for lack of a better word, cool species than the old shellcracker and the bluegill, the copper nose. So that hybrid, what does it look like?
It looks very similar to the copper nose bluegill, but it's got that where the black opercular is, it's got that white ring around it, instead of being solid black, and then it's got the lines across the gill plate.
Does it have the little red on the?
It can. Yeah. So it depends, and this was the differences that I was noticing amongst these fish is that one had the white line and almost like a tiger eye color that was in the middle of that white line, and then the other one had the notorious, like, there's no question.
Right.
But they have a little bit of a larger mouth gape when that happens, so it was very interesting to see. And then the shape of the face is a tad different. We call him a gill cracker, just so y'all know that is the name.
That's a great name.
The gill cracker.
Need to trademark that.
Yeah, you better go get it right now.
The gill cracker has, if you're familiar with bulldogs and the big ropes they have over their nose, the gill cracker kind of has that rope over its nose, and then the demarcation where the helmet starts begins. So it's a very interesting fish, and obviously it's beautifully colored up. So it's got those.
Are they feeding actively because they've got the copper nose in them? It'd be
Yes.
interesting to see what happens to one of them, how big they could get, because you
could-
would think
could
they'd get
put-
bigger.
I would think you could push that fish.
Yeah, go for the bigger mouth and
Like-
make selections.
Yep.
I mean, you
No
got a bunch of
ceiling.
F1s and they
Yeah.
all vary. So you could pick from the. Anyway,
Man,
That's exciting.
it's another
is- yeah,
podcast.
Honestly, that's really exciting. It is.
episode 2.
Now, did you see that commonly? Is he
We
think
did.
because she's got such a push envelope protein health level?
We see it quite a bit, but I think when I see them, it's usually more shellcracker. It looks more like a shellcracker.
Right.
So my guess is that it was probably. I lost my train of thought.
It's
So
all right.
probably bluegill eggs that were hit by a shellcracker, and so
Yeah.
you're getting more of that.
Yeah. So the other thing I was going to ask you that leads to that is that the timing. That's kind of the timing of the rut. The timing of the spawn is a real important thing too, and that's why crappie are not a good partner in ponds.
Right.
But bluegill are, because they spawn after the bass, and the bass fry can just gorge on. What's the timing of a shellcracker versus a bluegill? Are they identical, or?
So the shellcracker doesn't reproduce nearly as much as a bluegill, and that's why we're always heavy on bluegill in the bass pond. The big shellcracker spawn a lot of times is in March, and it's early.
Right, kind of like crappie.
That's right. And so I think probably when this happens is it's a warmer spring, and so the shellcracker and the bluegill are on the same beds at the same time.
Wow.
Close proximity.
Yeah.
Stuff's happening and wires get crossed, and then boom, you've got this extraordinary fish.
Send some pictures. I'd like to share that with people.
Okay.
I would love to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw a picture on
You
your.
did.
Yeah.
It's already there. Okay.
I was very excited about it. So, and it was one that I had confirmed. I had a couple in the past that I questioned. I even think we shocked up.
Absolutely.
And I was like, Shawn, this is a hybrid. And I just get really excited because.
Dudley's gotten that call from
we
me.
understand.
You know,
Yeah, understand.
Not very
Look
much
at
different.
this.
Dudley.
Oh, by the way, I found a new hybrid in Atlanta last weekend.
Lord. Everywhere we go. Everywhere we go.
It's
we're
a
looking
northern
for it.
red water oak.
But
Ooh,
it's
nice.
like, for us, it's like you see something you can't explain through all the
that's what it is.
traditional,
Yeah.
explanations. And so this doesn't make sense, and you got to go back. It's not always one, but
Yeah.
typically it is.
Yeah.
Well, so before we started recording, you were talking about the helmet of the bluegill
Yes.
and the brisket.
Brisket.
Could you go back to that and kind of explain your thoughts there?
Yeah, so the males get these, what we call the helmets, and it's just this big,
Bullnose.
bull nose,
Yeah.
ominous look about them. And they will forage voraciously prior to spawn. And it's almost like they are building up their armor.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger and beefier that helmet gets, the more attractive they think they are to the female.
Wow.
But they also use it as a defense mechanism to ward off other males that are getting close to their nest. And they will beat the snot out of other male bluegills that come close to those eggs. I mean, it's fight to the death. They're going to fight to kill the other bluegill. So those big beefy war helmets, they actually serve a purpose.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. Sounds weird. You could almost eat that. They're so big. It's like a snapper.
It
Keeping
is,
the
yeah.
throats and the cheeks and all that.
They're very, very territorial. And then you've got in the male bluegills, you've got, which we just did a bunch of research on, which was the sneaker male.
Mm-hmm.
This sneaker male is very small in comparison. He doesn't spend his energy building the big beefy helmet. He builds up his gonads.
Huh?
'Cause he's going to go in there. he's going to sneak in, and he will actually change his colors to mimic a female. And the sneaker will go in there and make it past the big beefy jock that's hiding and protecting the nest to make a deposit on those eggs, and then he's gone.
This is the same species?
Same.
I'm not
species.
touching that one, Bobby.
Golly.
Who knew?
Well, now you do.
That's
Look at
so
there.
fascinating.
That is
know.
fascinating. Wow.
I know.
Hmm.
It's incredible.
See that in waterfowl, don't we?
You would actually
Nesting.
prefer him
Birds.
not to. Sounds
Absolutely.
like 'cause it's
Absolutely. We want them
inferior.
out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He would be what we call a coal, like get out.
100%.
We don't want you in there.
But
You
he's
gotta go.
physiologically noticeably different.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. But to the untrained eye, he even appears female with the female colors, and they
Wow.
can do that on purpose. And I don't know what the numbers are. Like, how many sneaker males are there I don't know any of that. I don't have a PhD in any of that, but it's just interesting to watch and to see all of this, because our fish got really, really shallow this year, and I was able to observe these big bluegills and their behavior around the nest. I actually got on video a female coming in, dropping her eggs, and the male showing her out. Like, it was just amazing you read about it, but then you see it and it comes to life, and you're like, man, these fish are just cool. They're so freaking cool.
Nature is so.
It is.
And God and nature and all that.
It is.
It's interesting how, in real nature, what is God's way of having that sneaker brim?
Yeah.
It's diversity.
Diversity.
That's what
Nature's always adapting. We say that constantly.
survivability.
Everything we do, nature adapts, and just like the number one. Dr. Chamberlain's pretty much proved the number one buzzkill to gobbling activity is hunting pressure. Well, guess what? They adapt, just like whitetails become nocturnal, and so forth. They adapt, so somebody else can breed besides the big bull.
Absolutely.
It's crazy how it continues to adapt. Even plant species.
Yeah,
you spray glyphosate for 10 years, you get a glyphosate-resistant strain,
Right.
Nature's always adapting, and whatever we do, it's going to continue to do that.
Well,
really cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's real. Thank you for sharing that.
You're
so,
welcome.
What else? Are we asking the right question, Shawn? What are we forgetting?
I think that covers a lot of it. They feed and they watch, and we manage water quality and coal. It's not a lot different from any other management strategy. I think we have to be a little more careful.
Yeah.
The diligence level.
Yeah. Don't
24
take your
hours
eye
makes a
off.
big difference in a pond.
It does.
Wow.
Especially this time of year.
Absolutely. In our production ponds, we get water at 97 degrees.
Wow.
And shallow ponds like that, they just get hot, and it's.
And we do have that well. We can pump in 55-degree well water and bring the water temp down some. But, I mean, it's this time of year where we have to be super vigilant. I can't just go and leave and do all the things I want to do. Like, I have to be there where I can react if I need to.
So you're headed right back when you get through.
Absolutely.
I bet. Wow.
And sometimes when ponds this green, when it's this hot, you don't have to lose your algae bloom. The bloom can get so thick, so when it's dark, they're respiring, they're consuming oxygen, all the algae is.
Yeah.
And so they can actually suck all of the oxygen out because your bloom is so thick.
Wow.
So it doesn't even take a catastrophe to happen.
Yeah,
So-
I took like 3 or 4 days of fisheries classes back when I was in forestry school, and just in that small amount of time, I learned a lot about how dynamic the water is from the course of, sunrise to the next sunrise. Like the pH can change like 2 or 3 points
That's
in,
right.
in the matter of a day.
We watch that too. We have just a little test kit, and I go out there and do a little science experiment and try to keep an eye on it. And it's not like, hard and fast, great test kit, but it is enough for me to go, Shawn, this color don't look right. Come up here.
Well, and luckily they're on a limestone mountain, so they
Yes.
have a high alkalinity. The higher
Yes.
alkalinity, the better it buffers
Yeah,
pH.
a lot of prairie around there, a lot of calcium in the dirt.
Is there a aquatic legume that could help fix oxygen in the water?
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen is what it.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. That's
Put that on the things to do list there, man. That's a great project for biologic right there.
Or you wouldn't want it to take off and get out of hand. I think about aquatics, and most of them are a problem.
yes. Anything that's not rooted on the bank is a problem.
Shawn, it's got to be exciting to work on a project like this.
It really is because, we do a lot of ponds and it's just kind of there.
Right.
People
Oh,
want
yeah,
it to
like
look pretty or,
Guilty.
but
Guilty.
folks that's excited about it, I mean, it's just fun to do. And nobody's doing it. We get to do new things. And, I shock hundreds of ponds, and every time I go shock it, it's just exciting.
That's cool.
It's crazy.
But even not, let's take the level of that they're putting into this. Let's push that over here. Just if a guy's got a pond and he'll put a feeder on it and he'll fertilize accordingly and he'll follow your recommendations, a pond is so much fun and can be so productive.
Absolutely.
And you could catch some really big brim and bass following just the basics.
For sure. And we tell a lot of folks that have small ponds, especially if they have multiple ponds on the property, do something different. Don't just do bass and bluegill. One of my favorites is in a small pond, put bluegill and then put hybrid striped bass in there because they don't reproduce. And you can catch a 6-pound hybrid while it's helping control your bluegill population. So,
Speaking of a good fight, those things can fight.
Yes.
do you like hybrids?
Like all hybrids.
No.
I mean, a 6-pound hybrid bass will strip a bass fishing rig.
Oh, absolutely. And so there's just a lot of things you can do. We did a whole show. We never left the dock, and we just caught big bluegill all day.
Like 8 hours.
Yeah.
Standing on the main dock.
It's incredible.
At this time in the show, we always kind of turn it over to Dudley, and it's
Okay.
called Rapid Fire. Sarah, you may have participated. This may have been before your time.
No,
But-
I think I did do this, and I
Wait.
messed up or something.
No,
So-
you can't.
so-
you,
Okay.
you couldn't make
Okay.
that.
So
never mind.
we've got a trivia question for you two
that's
guys
what it was.
later, but so the rapid fire is brought to you by our friends at Springfield Armory, and Dudley asks these questions, and
Okay.
and they'll be from both of you guys, I'm assuming. So let's
All
go,
right.
Dad.
So, let's see. We're just trying to get to know y'all even better. So just try to answer the questions quickly, and it'll be a
My
lot of fun.
favorite fish is the bluegill.
We got that on
Okay.
there.
Okay.
All right. So are you ready?
Go.
All
I
right.
guess so.
Favorite season, winter or summer?
Summer.
I'm a big guy. I get
music.
hot. I like it cold.
Music, country or rock?
Rock.
Country.
Tea, sweet or unsweet?
Sweet.
Barbecue, white sauce or
White
regular
sauce.
sauce?
Red.
All right. Montgomery barbecue joints. Dreamland, K&J or Brenda's?
Gibson's.
Gibson's.
It's not even on the
Boom.
list. How
I
did y'all
agree.
leave Gibson's
Yeah,
off?
Bob Gibson. I even knew that one.
All right. I'm sorry. I apologize. Fish in the winter or hunt?
Fish.
Electric fillet knife or regular?
Electric.
Regular.
Boat or bank?
Boat.
Bank.
Roll Tide Athletics or War Eagle Fish and Wildlife?
War Eagle.
Or I'm gonna say War Eagle so I don't get crucified in here. But roll tide.
Fly tackle or spin tackle?
Spin.
I just learned how to fly fish. I'm gonna give it to fly.
And
I'm obsessed.
last but not least, do you call it Lower Alabama or Southern Alabama?
L.A.
L.A.
Hey, great. Hey, see why y'all are a great team.
I think L.A. was the only thing they agreed to.
Yin and yang.
That's what it takes. No doubt about it. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is interesting. Wow. So I'm going to look at Mac now. We've got a trivia question that we'll add. Y'all can kind of work together on this and give us an answer. If you get it right, one of our listeners has left us a review.
Oh, okay,
and they have a
gotcha.
chance to win a prize, and it seems like we always give the prize away whether you get it right
That's
or
right.
not. So
Yeah.
I will say it with confidence one way or the other.
Yeah.
There you go.
yeah, so this is right in y'all's wheelhouse. So we'll turn it over to Mac now.
All right, so y'all are playing for Jake SW201, and the prize is some of Robert Arrington Deer Meat for Dinner's furniture in the front lobby.
We got a lot of it out there. Come and get it.
What, Lanny? What is the deal? The whole front of the building is
I thought he was going to ship a chair up in here, but apparently he's coming to town. So
there's 40 boxes of furniture out in the
There
Don't
Yeah, there
exaggerate. There's 37.
yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot.
I needed a new mattress. Thanks, Robert.
All right, so I guess since we're not going to do the furniture, we can just do a bag of hot spot from Clean by Hot.
All right.
All right, so the question is, why is a shell cracker called a shell cracker?
It has pharyngeal teeth in its throat that it uses to crack the shells open.
Man,
Well,
she,
yeah, she got
she
that
gave
right.
with authority.
Yeah.
She'd already
Yeah.
named that.
Said it with confidence.
I would say that's like bonus points.
So that,
saying that
and it's
weird
the,
word.
The shells of what?
Snails.
Yeah. Which you posted recently are very important to the pond.
They can be. They can be disastrous too. So they can cause parasites among bluegills, even though they can feed shell crackers. They can actually eat decaying matter. And there's a type of algae they eat.
How many different kinds of snails are there that they would eat? Is it
The
just-
black ones. I don't know.
So I have seen people in the Black Prairie shooting mallards on a cattle pond, and they're eating snails. Now,
Invertebrates.
they wasn't like they had hundreds and hundreds, but I can remember, 3 people killing a limit, and they were just farm pond, 6 acres or 10 acres, cattle pond, nothing else, nothing planted, but they were coming in there to feed and eat snails.
Invertebrates.
Yep.
I had no earthly idea.
They
I'm ashamed
literally
to say.
had them and picked the snails with the shells on and all in their craw.
And calcium.
Crawl or crawl?
Craw.
Escargot.
That's a good rapid fire question.
That is a good one. I would pencil that down.
So now we have one. Since we're two of you, we've got one more. This is a bonus question.
Okay. It's your turn.
All right, Shawn, you ready?
No.
She got hers right. Now it's your go. That's right.
He's up.
All right, so the bonus question. Give us another name that a goggle eye might be called.
Stump knocker.
I hadn't heard that one.
I think you got that right.
Yeah.
There's a long list.
There is a long
things.
list.
Yeah, so
Every time we go somewhere, especially Louisiana, they have a new name for every
I know.
fish.
That's true.
I just say yes. You know,
So I grew up when my dad was from L.A. And for the first 10 or 12 years of my life, I never heard of a bass. They were all called green trout.
Green trout.
you know, white perch,
Yeah.
sockeye.
Sockeye.
Yeah, it's
And they called, for whatever reason, they called them strawberry bass, but it was the original bluegill. I guess common bluegill is what you call them. And
Interesting.
for whatever reason, they call them strawberry bass. I don't know why.
yeah. So
well, I think that's what also a goggle eye is also called a strawberry bass from the
Hmm.
list of names that we had today.
Warmouth.
Warmouth. That's the one
Warmouth.
I've always called him.
Yep.
Warmouth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody really knows what they are. Everybody just uses a different term, you know, warmouth and warmouth and the green sunfish get mixed up all the
Is
time.
that we call them pool perch? That's a green
Yeah.
sunfish. Do they ever invade your pond?
We've
Wow.
not seen one.
Wow.
It's crazy how they don't get in ours. And now, if you leave a farm pond by itself,
Oh, it's
the
covered.
cattle, it'll be covered up
Yeah.
in them.
Yeah.
But I've never seen a big infestation in any of our.
They
stock
actually
ponds.
only
Probably get
spawn
eaten.
once a year,
Okay.
and so
I gotcha.
they don't have a good chance to. In a new pond, they'll take over. But if there's an existing population, they're not.
The bass.
Not
So
really
they're
aggressive.
no big harm then.
No.
Okay. Great. They're a great trot line bait.
Love them. No doubt about it. My buddy the catfish.
How
needs
about
something
that?
to eat,
I'm
yo.
glad to know that. I didn't know that helps me not be so fearful of them getting in the bass ponds.
Dudley, you got another question?
I think I'm questioned out.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's been really good. We've learned a lot.
Great stuff.
This is
No
without
doubt.
question one of the most interesting
Yeah, it sure has. huh?
podcasts we've ever done.
Yeah. So, what else is there? Did we learn anything,
Oh,
Lanny? I'm
gosh.
looking at you.
I hate to say, I didn't know that a shellcracker ate snails. So I learned that in addition to what I learned over here. So I was dwelling on that. I mean, I was,
I learned so
I'm
much,
supposed to
but
know
just
that.
to see the commitment to
Yeah.
excellence behind, animals, wild game, and then sharing that with their dad like this, that's
really
so
special.
much, makes it so much cooler than
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
story about raising the biggest one ever. That's going to happen.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to
It's
happen.
going to happen.
yeah,
gonna
and we want
I
you.
mean, so determined.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, tell your dad we said hello.
I will.
Please.
He will love that.
yeah.
He will love that. He will think he's famous now. So.
Well, he is.
Yeah, he is. There's no doubt about that.
Growing some big fish, and it is. I'm with Toxic. We're all in agreement. It's really special
Thank
what
you
y'all
so
are doing.
much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
that's
that.
super cool.
Yeah, and protect that thing now. Don't let those little
I'm not.
neighborhood hooligans
I
come
pity
in
the poor hooligan that tries.
Yeah, for real.
Won't happen. Not on my watch. So.
She's looking for blue-green algae all the time. She's
I
going to see you
am.
over there
Yeah,
on the
I will
pond
see
bank,
you.
Bobby.
Oh, I will notice if that's not the color cork I have ever fished with. That's not my bait. I will notice. That's not my fishing line in that tree. Like I will know. So
Be ye warned.
be ye warned. Be ye warned.
So, Sarah, if a guy wants to, or if somebody wants to follow you, what's your Instagram handle?
It's Sarah the Closer Parvin.
What does the closer mean?
That is from my background in sales and marketing. So basically, if you can't get the deal done, you call the closer. I come in.
Mac, put her number down.
Get the deal done for you.
Shawn, do you even know what social media is?
No, I've seen it. The
I'm
Facebook is out there
The
somewhere.
Facebook,
but
that talking tick, whatever that stuff is.
tickety tock.
Tickety
Tickety
tock.
tock.
That's what it is.
Yeah, but so guys should American Sportfish. You guys have a page.
That's on the net, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
net,
The interwebs, as we call it.
Interwebs.
Yep. So they can go and follow.
AmericanSportfish.com, and we're on Facebook. So I think we're on other things, but I've never seen it. So
Yeah, you can find it if you look for it.
yeah.
That sounds good. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Mac, you got anything else you want to add? Guys, we appreciate everybody listening to our podcast.
100%.
It's well, we don't take it for granted. There's a
And
lot of
watching
things
the
to listen
television
to.
show.
Yeah. So, Sarah, have you ever watched our television show?
I have, yes.
All right.
We need to get you to identify as a gamekeeper.
All right.
I see on your social media page you've got different things, and that's one of the things.
If she's not keeping game, then
I don't know who is.
Yeah.
That's right.
My dad wears the hat. I actually just posted a video of my dad and I fishing, and I realized he had his hat on, and he loves that kind of stuff. He just thinks he's high cotton when he's got that new hat, you know.
We'll get him
big-
fixed
we'll
up.
fix him up.
Absolutely.
Big deal to
Yeah,
him.
we
Real
will.
big deal to him.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate y'all traveling
Yeah.
over here. It's so much better when
Absolutely.
the guests sit on the couch.
No
and
Yes.
look
doubt
at us.
about it.
It is. So again, thanks everybody for watching the television show. It's airing on the Outdoor Channel Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Central Time, and we appreciate you listening to the podcast as well. If you can, give us leave us a review, and please share us with your friends. Toxie, you look like you're fixing to get up and run out and go eat.
I hear the dinner bell.
I am, but not in a big hurry.
Yep. Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Mac.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.